Is Freddy's new rework actually a nerf? Well, right now as it stands on the PTB, it's hard to come to a definitive answer to that question. There's elements that have been buffed, and there's also undoubtedly several things that have been nerfed as well. Keep in mind the PTB is by no means the finished product. The whole reason the PTB exists is for players on Steam to test out an upcoming update so the developers can adjust balancing changes accordingly. So it's very likely that there'll be at the very least slight changes made to Freddy's power, and perhaps even major changes. We'll just have to wait and see, but today I'm going to go over all the things that have been changed with the Freddy rework and let you know my thoughts on what is better and what is worse overall. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below, so let me know whether you agree or disagree, and be sure to let me know if there's anything that I've missed out as well. So Freddy's power has been completely changed and reworked pretty much from the ground up. The main difference with Freddy's power is the fact that he now has both dream pallets and dream snares and can switch between the two, whereas before Freddy only had the dream snares and would have to use add-ons to be able to switch between dream snares and dream pallets. So the fact that Freddy now has both dream pallets and dream snares built into his base kit may seem like a huge buff at first, but there's definitely way more to it than that. The reason this can't really be considered a direct buff is because both the dream snares and dream pallets activate in completely different ways now. Beforehand, the dream snares would be placed down as traps and would hinder the survivor's movement speed, and whilst the new snares do still hinder the survivor's movement speed, they're no longer traps, and now instead they're like projectiles that can be sent towards the survivor. The new dream snare projectiles and the dream traps both have their own pros and cons. One thing I always liked doing with Freddy's snare traps was setting one down near my Devour Hope totem, as Devour Hope's a perk that I really enjoy using. The reason I liked using it so much on Freddy especially is because Freddy allowed you to set a trap next to it, and you'd be notified if any sleeping survivor starts cleansing it. Of course, they could just wake up first to get around this, but it did add a slight layer of protection without bringing additional perks like Hex and Dying, for example. Another thing that the older dream snares do have going for them is the fact that there's no cooldown. Freddy could spam back-to-back snares at a loop if he wants to, whereas the new ones do have a bit of a cooldown. The newer ones are definitely great too though. Not only can they help out a ton in chase, but they also increase the sleep timer if they hit a survivor who's currently awake, whereas beforehand they would have absolutely no effect on survivors who are awake. Overall, I'd probably say the newer ones are slightly better, as you can get more value out of them in chase, and the fact that they do have an effect on survivors that are awake is a huge positive for the newer dream snares. But I definitely do love the older dream snares as well. The main difference with the new dream pallets are the fact that the survivors can now tell which pallet is a real pallet and which one is a dream pallet, whereas dream pallets before would only appear to survivors that are asleep, and it would be impossible to tell them apart from the real pallets. These older pallets would just be a decoy that can't stun Freddy or harm the survivor. This made the dream pallets fun to use and fun to play against, as it added an extra element of strategy, requiring the survivors to remember which pallets have already spawned and which pallets have already been used by your teammates. The new dream pallets now have a slight blood effect on them, making them distinguishable from regular pallets to the survivors. This change not only removes the whole remembering game that came with the old pallets, but they also now function in a completely different way. Freddy can now be stunned with these new pallets, and these new pallets can also harm the survivors when Freddy holds M2 and blows up the pallet. This harms any survivor nearby within its small radius. I don't know about you guys, but I much prefer the concept of the original pallets. Freddy's power also allows him to teleport to generators, and this, much like the dream snares and dream pallets, has been buffed in a way, but overall I would say this is a nerf. Freddy can now teleport to completed generators, which may sound good, but in reality, how often are you ever going to need to teleport over to an area of the map where the generator has already been completed? But the main reason why I think the generator teleporting has been nerfed overall is because he can no longer cancel his teleport, and this was something that was a huge thing for Freddy and allowed him to mind game survivors by faking a teleport. This is something I did a lot whenever I would play as Freddy, and taking this away is a huge downside for that part of his power. So overall, I would definitely say this is a nerf to his ability to teleport to generators. But speaking of teleporting, Freddy can now teleport to survivors that are asleep and healing up. Whilst this sounds extremely strong, and it definitely will be against survivors that don't really know what they're doing, as soon as everyone figures out he can teleport over to you whilst you're asleep, everyone will just start waking up before healing, and it'll get to the point where you almost never get any value out of this teleport into the healing survivor unless it's like a new player that doesn't really know what they're doing. They've also made it much easier to wake up as well. Beforehand, you had to go all the way onto the other side of the map to go to a specific alarm clock that was assigned to you, but now alarm clocks are much more accessible because every single alarm clock is available to use for any sleeping survivor. So it's like they've given Freddy a new ability, but they've made it so easy for the survivors to counter ignore it. Think of it this way, why would the survivors just allow him to teleport over to them when instead they could just go to the nearest alarm clock and wake up, which fully prevents it and only takes a matter of seconds. It's definitely too soon to tell for sure, but it does seem like this could be an overall nerf to his base kit when all things are considered. Again, this is just the PTB, so it's likely they'll make some changes. We'll just have to wait and see what they have in store for us. Also, a side note, but it would be cool if they could obtain the licensing to include voice lines and cosmetics. Something that seems very unlikely, but it would be something that I'd love to see added into DBD. I just mentioned how I think it's an overall nerf to his base kit, and the reason I say base kit is because his add-ons have received huge changes. As far as I'm aware, every single add-on has been changed with the exception of the iridescent black box add-on, which is basically like a mini blood warden. This is definitely great news in terms of making Freddy stronger. Beforehand, Freddy had some of the weakest add-ons in the entire game, with pretty much the only good add-on being the iridescent paintbrush add-on, which made survivors start the trial in the dream world and would also make them unable to wake up by missing skill checks. This add-on does seem to have been buffed as well, as it now reveals the auras of survivors in the dream world whenever they're further than 32 meters away, as well as increase each survivor's sleep meter by 50%. I've not tested this add-on out myself, or any other add-on for that matter, because the queues are just way too long, but this definitely seems like an amazing add-on. Pretty similar to the old Object of Obsession perk, but now for Killer instead, where the survivor can't also see your aura. So this is definitely going to be really fun to try out and something that could be a really strong add-on. We're not going to talk about every single add-on today because there's just way too many to talk about in one video, but we will briefly go over some of the noteworthy add-ons. The unicorn block now increases the range of the pallet explosion by 1 whole meter. It's hard to judge whether or not these pallets will be effective against smart survivors, but increasing the radius by a whole meter definitely seems pretty good overall. The blue dress add-on makes it so the dream snares no longer move and only last for 8 seconds. Like I said, I haven't tried any of these add-ons out yet, but it seems like this blue dress add-on will revert the dream snare somewhat back to how it used to be, with a trap rather than a projectile. It does have some huge limitations as well. Only one can be placed at a time, and as previously mentioned, it only lasts for 8 seconds. So this seems like a terrible add-on in theory. You'd definitely be much better off with the regular projectile dream snares. The jump rope add-on was an add-on that used to be really strong back in the day. I remember it used to like offer some gen slowdown, but then it got nerfed and now it is getting buffed again. So now with this new Freddy PTB, when it releases, it will increase the hindered penalty by 1 second whenever a survivor's hit with a dream snare. So this does seem to be a really good add-on once again. Not sure if it'll be as good as the old gen slowdown add-on, but it's definitely going to function in a different way. Now it's more of like an anti-loop add-on rather than a gen slowdown, but it does seem to be a really great add-on for anti-loop. The paint thinner add-on reveals any survivor with killer instinct for 6 seconds and gives you the option to teleport to them whenever they drop a dream pallet. Definitely nothing crazy strong or anything, but the fact that it gives Freddy another thing to teleport to make it worth mentioning. The class photo is another add-on that gives you an additional method of teleporting. Whilst using this add-on, any survivor in the dream world and working on an exit gate will be revealed to you with killer instinct and also give you the option to teleport over to them. The Z block reveals the survivor's aura for 3 seconds whenever they're hit with a dream snare or a pallet rupture. Whilst this wouldn't do much seeing the survivor's aura for 3 seconds whenever they're hit with a pallet rupture, seeing the survivor's aura for 3 seconds whenever survivors are hit with a dream snare would be great for playing around loops where line of sight is blocked. And the fact this add-on also has no cooldown make it seem pretty strong. But that is going to bring us to the end of our discussion video. Like I said, definitely let me know your thoughts and opinions overall in the comment section down below. It is too soon to tell whether or not this makes Freddy slightly weaker or slightly stronger overall. It was initially meant to be a buff, and on paper it did seem stronger than what it seemed like in game. I remember reading over the patch notes, I definitely thought he was going to be absolutely amazing. When I played against him and when I played as him as well, he doesn't feel as strong as I was expecting him to the point where it almost feels like it could be a nerf overall as well. But from my early impressions, I'd say maybe his base kit is slightly weaker, but when you take into consideration just how much better his add-ons are overall, I definitely say his add-ons are his saving grace and probably make him slightly stronger than the current Freddy. But we will have to wait for this update to release, so we've all got more time with it. We can come to a better conclusion and form a better opinion. And I definitely expect more changes from the PTB, as that is usually the case with the PTBs. But I hope you've all enjoyed the video today, and I'll see you all in the next one.